My name is Ebony, and I've been invisible in my own family for as long as I can remember. When they left for yet another family vacation without me, claiming they couldn't afford an extra ticket, I realized this wasn't about money. It was about me never being chosen. What they didn't know was that this time, I wasn't just staying behind, I was plotting my exit. Before we dive in, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to know how far this story reaches. Now, let's begin. It started with a suitcase thudding against the hallway wall. My mom was zipping it up with the same energy she used to slam doors when I was younger, tight-lipped, efficient, determined not to look me in the eye. I stood in the kitchen, dish towel in hand, watching crumbs fall from the counter onto the floor I'd just mopped. My heart beat against my ribs like it knew something ugly was coming. I had felt the shift all week, whispers behind doors, Aisha laughing too loudly about sunscreen and sandals, and the suspicious quiet when I walked in. "Ebony," my dad finally said, like he was clearing his throat with my name. "We need to talk." They sat me down in the living room, on the edge of the old beige couch that still had a sag where Aisha always sat. My sister wasn't even home for this part, too busy getting her nails done, vacation ready. My mom twisted her wedding ring like it held all the answers, while my dad rubbed the back of his neck the way he always did when guilt showed up. "We only had enough for 3 tickets," he said. "You know how tight things have been." My mouth went dry. I couldn't even laugh, it would have sounded too bitter. "So, I'm staying here again. It's not that we don't want you there," my mom added quickly, eyes darting. "It's just, your sister's been really stressed lately and you thought she needed the break." I cut in, my voice shaking despite every ounce of self-control I'd built up over the years. "I work 2 jobs. I helped pay for that new water heater. I gave up my birthday dinner so we could cover rent last fall. But yeah, she's the one who needs a vacation." My father's face hardened, like my logic was somehow an attack. "It's not about what you've done. It's just things lined up this way. You know we appreciate you." Appreciate me. That word felt like lint, useless, soft, and stuck to everything I never wanted. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Instead, I stood up and said the most dangerous words I've ever spoken in that house. "Enjoy your trip." And I meant it like a curse. I walked back to my room, slowly, deliberately, as if my footsteps could drown out the echo of their silence. The walls of our Cleveland apartment had always felt close, but that day, they pressed in like they were ashamed of what they heard. I sat on the edge of my twin bed, listening to my mother laugh again in the hallway, laughing too loudly, like if she didn't, she might hear the truth of what just happened. I wasn't chosen. Not again. Maybe not ever. Aisha breezed in a few hours later, makeup flawless and phone in hand. "Wish you could come, sis," she said without looking up, then snapped a photo of her suitcase and captioned it #vacation vibes. I wanted to scream, but instead I picked up the towel I dropped and wiped the counter again. That night, as I lay on my lumpy mattress staring at the ceiling, a single thought lodged in my chest like a splinter I couldn't reach. If I disappeared tomorrow, they'd notice the dishes weren't done before they noticed I was gone. They left at dawn. I didn't come out to say goodbye. The apartment felt quieter without their noise, but not in the peaceful way. More like a theater after the curtains dropped, with popcorn still on the floor and no one left to applaud. I sat with that silence, letting it settle in, letting it show me something I'd never dared to admit. This wasn't just a one-time exclusion. This was the system, the rule. The unspoken family policy that said Ebony comes last. But what if I did? What if this was the last time I let them? The first full day without them felt off. Not liberating, not peaceful, just empty. No clatter of my mother's bangles in the kitchen. No Aisha singing off-key from the shower like she was auditioning for some show that would never call. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak from the hallway like the walls were sighing with me. I made myself coffee and didn't bother cleaning the mug afterward. That alone felt like rebellion. I sat on the couch, that same dip where Aisha's presence lingered like a perfume I didn't ask for, and just stared at the door. They were really gone. Not a text. Not a thank you again, sweetheart, for the extra shift I picked up so Mom wouldn't have to worry about groceries. Not a postcard promise, not even a joke. Nothing. I turned on the TV just for noise, but every channel seemed to scream joy. Couples hiking, laughing children, sunny beaches. I clicked it off. Silence again. And in that silence, the reel began. Not a movie, not a memory, but a pattern. The year I saved up for new school clothes but gave the money to Dad when the car broke down. The time I canceled my one weekend away with Nima because Aisha needed the apartment quiet to study for a final she later bragged she cheated on. The Thanksgiving I spent cooking because Mom had the flu, and Aisha still got the credit because she decorated. The holidays, the birthdays, the countless little choices where I swallowed my needs because it's just not a good time, Ebony. I stood up without even thinking and went to my room. Pulled the shoebox from under my bed, the one with my crumpled paycheck stubs and a folded dream I barely dared to look at anymore. A list, handwritten on old notebook paper. Places I'll go someday. I hadn't added to it in years. Santa Fe, Portland, Savannah. The paper was soft with time, the edges curled like it had waited long enough. I added a new one at the bottom, anywhere that's not here. Then I opened my second drawer and reached for the envelope. It wasn't much, just a couple hundred tucked away in 20s and 10s, stashed every now and then when tips were good and I didn't spend on takeout. I hadn't touched it because part of me thought maybe one day they'd finally include me. But they didn't, and that day might never come, so I counted it slowly. $368, not enough to run away, but enough to start treating myself like someone who mattered. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't ask to be included anymore. I wouldn't beg to be loved fairly. I'd just detach, quietly, strategically. I went online and opened a new savings account, separate from the one my parents knew about. I didn't transfer everything, just a start, $50. It felt like planting a seed no one would see until it bloomed, and it felt good. The next morning, I deep cleaned the kitchen, not out of duty, but out of habit. I scrubbed the stove while Aisha posted a poolside boomerang on her story. I rearranged the spice rack she never used. When I reached for the drawer I'd fixed last month, the one they all pretended had fixed itself, I paused. They had no idea how much I did. And maybe that was the point. Maybe they didn't want to know, because if they acknowledged the truth, they'd owe me something they were never ready to give: accountability. By the time Nima called that night, I was stretched out on the couch, a blanket around my legs and the blinds half open to the moon. "Hey, stranger," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "They gone?" "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep it breezy. "Guess who got to stay back and guard the furniture?" She didn't laugh. Instead, she sighed. Again. There was silence on the line, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that holds space, the kind that understands without needing more words. "I don't get it, Eb. You give so much. Why can't they see it?" I stared at the ceiling where the shadows stretched like reaching fingers. "I think they see it," I said finally. "They just don't care enough to say so." Another beat of silence. Then Nima said something soft, almost too soft to hear. "You deserve better." 3 words, but they cracked something inside me. Maybe it was the truth. Maybe it was hearing someone finally say it out loud. I didn't cry, not then. I just closed my eyes and whispered back, "Yeah, I think I do too." The days that followed melted together like wax, warm, slow, and a little suffocating. I moved like clockwork. Wake up, diner shift, nap, warehouse shift, sleep, repeat. There was something about being left behind that made every movement feel heavier, like I was dragging a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. The dependable daughter. The one who covered, who waited, who forgave. I kept waiting for someone to say thank you or even just notice I was still here. No one did. My parents were off-grid. No updates, no check-ins, not even a photo in the family group chat. Aisha, of course, was another story. Every time I opened my phone, she was there. Smiling at some rooftop brunch, posing in front of scenic overlooks, legs crossed in luxury I couldn't even imagine. Her captions stung the worst. "Family time is everything, blessed." That word echoed like a slap. Not because I didn't want her to be happy, but because I wasn't even considered part of the blessing. I'd scroll in silence, put my phone down, then stare at the cracked tile in the kitchen, the one I paid to fix last fall when the landlord wouldn't. The kitchen felt like a metaphor. I kept trying to make things better in a place that had already decided I wasn't worth the effort. And still, I worked. The diner was the same as ever. Greasy floors, burnt coffee smell clinging to my clothes, the bell over the door ringing like a threat every time someone walked in. My manager, Carl, gave me a nod when I clocked in. That was his version of praise. "You're reliable, Eb," he muttered once as I restocked the condiments. "World needs more like you." Funny how reliable sounds like a compliment until you realize it's code for "we'll never promote you, but we'll sure as hell lean on you." I smiled anyway. What else could I do? The warehouse shift at night was quieter. Just me, pallets of inventory, and a Bluetooth speaker I wasn't technically allowed to use. I played old soul tracks and sorted boxes like I was building something, even if I didn't know what. Nima called every Thursday like clockwork. "You still breathing?" she'd ask, half joking. "Barely," I'd laugh, though it wasn't always a joke. She never judged. She didn't try to fix anything either, just listened. And that alone kept me sane. "I've been thinking," I said one night as I balanced my dinner, a soggy sandwich on my knees. "What if I just left, like stopped waiting to be invited and planned something for myself?" There was a pause on the other end. Then softly, "Do it." 2 words, but they pulsed in my chest for hours. The next day I cleaned the bathroom while Aisha posted about missing home already. I scrubbed the sink I installed last winter, vacuumed the carpet I steam cleaned. I kept moving because if I stopped, I might implode. Then, as I tossed a rag into the laundry, my eyes drifted to the corner drawer, the one no one used but me. Inside was a notepad I kept for bills and budget lists. I flipped to a fresh page. Solo trip ideas, I didn't even know where to start. But I wrote it anyway. Just seeing it, those 3 words, felt electric. That night in the break room between shifts, I pulled a napkin from the dispenser and scribbled down the name, Santa Fe. I didn't know why, it just felt right, warm, quiet, mine. For once, the idea of leaving wasn't just a daydream. It was a whisper that refused to be silenced. Back home, I logged into my new savings account. $75 now, a small number, but it was growing. I stared at it for a while, then closed my laptop gently like I was tucking in a secret. I was still here, still excluded, still the afterthought. But something was changing quietly inside me. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to notice. They came back on a Wednesday. The front door creaked open around noon, and the apartment was suddenly filled with vacation energy. The loud kind, the kind that spills out of rolling suitcases and overfilled shopping bags. Aisha was the first one I saw. Her skin was a shade darker, golden from beach sun, and her braids were freshly done, long and glinting with beads. "Guess who's back?" she sang, sliding off her sunglasses. I stood in the kitchen, hands damp from doing dishes I hadn't dirtied. "Hey," I said. That was it, just hey. No hug, no drama, just space. My mom followed in next, her arms full of souvenirs. "Ebony, sweetie, I got you something." She held up a t-shirt that said "I the Island Life." It was 2 sizes too big and still had a clearance tag dangling from the sleeve. I took it with a nod. "Thanks." That night, they insisted on a welcome-back dinner. Nothing fancy, just takeout from the Thai place down the block. But you'd think it was a banquet from the way they set the table, chattering over each other, retelling the same stories in different voices. And then this waiter tried to upsell us on gold leaf cocktails. My dad laughed, spearing a piece of chicken. "Like we're celebrities or something." Aisha rolled her eyes playfully. "I mean, can you blame him? We looked good." I sat between them, silent, chewing my noodles with the same expression I wore at every past-due birthday dinner, composed disinterest. "So," my mom said between bites, "we have to take you next time, right, honey?" My dad nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely, it's not right that you missed out. We'll start planning earlier next time." Aisha didn't look up from her phone. I pressed my fork down a little too hard into the paper container. "You've said that before." The table stilled. My mother blinked. "What?" "You've said that before many times." There was a long silence. Then my dad let out a laugh, the awkward kind people use to smooth over a mess they don't want to clean. "Come on, Ebony, don't be like that." Like what? Like honest? Like tired? I forced a small smile, the kind that costs too much. "It's fine, I'm glad you all had fun." The lie sat like cold rice in my throat, hard to swallow, impossible to digest. They moved on quickly, relieved. I cleared the plates after dinner. Alone. As usual, while scrubbing a sticky pan, I heard Aisha in the hallway laughing with our mom about something. And then he said I looked like a model. I mean, duh. The ache returned, that old familiar one. Not jealousy, just tiredness. Tired of being the background to someone else's highlight reel. Later that night, while brushing my teeth, I stared at myself in the mirror. The girl looking back wasn't angry. She was something quieter, something more dangerous. She was done hoping. The next morning, while Aisha slept in and my parents argued softly over bills in the living room, I made myself a cup of tea and pulled out my envelope again. I added $30 more. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't explain why I was suddenly saying no to buying extra groceries or skipping coffee runs. I just kept saving. Because the next trip wasn't going to be something I waited for. It was going to be mine. It happened on a Thursday, just as the afternoon shift was ending and I was folding napkins by the window. Carl, my manager, walked over holding his clipboard like it was a crystal ball. "Ebony," he said with that flat tone that usually meant someone didn't show up again, "you want more hours." I blinked. "Always." He scratched his neck. "One of the night girls just quit. Total no call, no show. If you want to cover her schedule, 6 to midnight, Thursdays through Saturdays, it's yours." My eyes widened. 3 extra shifts, all with overtime. I tried to play it cool, but my voice betrayed me. "Seriously," Carl nodded, already walking away. "Starts tomorrow. You're the only one I trust to not flake." That last part landed heavy in my chest. You're the only one I trust. I'd never thought of Carl as particularly insightful, but in that moment, it felt like someone had finally seen me. Not just as a body filling a space, but as someone dependable, consistent, capable. And just like that, the air felt different. I finished folding the napkins like I was handling silk. I wiped down the tables like I was preparing a stage. I clocked out with a small smile tucked into the corner of my lips. One no one saw, but I felt it. That night, I didn't collapse into bed the way I usually did. Instead, I pulled out that stained little napkin I'd scribbled on weeks ago, the one with Santa Fe written in uneven loops. I added to it. Savings goal, $1,200. Timeline, 2 months. Then I started doodling, nothing fancy. Just little suns, a road winding into hills, a suitcase with stickers. For the first time in maybe years, I allowed myself to imagine something beyond this apartment. A place where no one knew me as the one who stayed behind. A place where I could be someone else. Or maybe just more of myself. I tucked the napkin into my journal like it was a blueprint for freedom. The next day I worked the morning shift, came home, showered, changed, and headed right back for the new night slot. The exhaustion was real, but underneath it there was a low hum of something brighter. Purpose. The restaurant was quieter at night. Fewer families, more regulars. The kind of crowd that tipped in cash and didn't ask questions. I liked it. I liked earning this. Every extra hour felt like a brick laid on the path out. Every side-eye from Aisha when I got home late felt like a confirmation that I was building something she'd never think to build. That weekend, while my parents hosted a game night in the living room, laughing with neighbors and showing off the photo album from the trip, I stayed in my room with the door closed and a calculator in my lap. If I stuck to this pace, I'd hit my savings goal in 7 weeks. 7 weeks until I could leave, just for a while, but still leave. I wasn't sure what I'd do in Santa Fe. I just knew I'd breathe differently. That Monday, I started browsing rentals in other neighborhoods too. Not because I had a plan, but because it felt like something future me might need. I'd saved tabs labeled studio apartments with sunlight and cheap sublets near the park. Every little tab felt like a whisper. You don't have to stay here forever. And maybe I wouldn't. At work, I started keeping my tips in a separate pouch. I stopped offering to cover Aisha's errands. I declined an invitation to a cousin's brunch. No explanation, just a polite no. My parents noticed, but they didn't ask. They just assumed I was moody. Let them. Let them think whatever they needed to while I worked my quiet plan. Nima noticed, though. "You sound different," she said during our Thursday call. "Lighter." "I got a few extra shifts," I replied. "Ebony," she laughed, "you getting more work has never made you lighter." I paused. Then admitted the truth. "I think I'm saving up for something just for me." She didn't ask what. She didn't need to, she just whispered, "It's about time." Saturday morning came loud. The kind of loud that echoed through thin walls and old grievances. My parents were in the kitchen, laughing with their mouths full, voices bouncing off the ceiling. Pots clattered, a chair scraped. Aisha was back from somewhere, her perfume trailing down the hallway like an announcement. I was in the bathroom on my knees with a scrub brush. No one noticed, and I didn't remind them. That was the new rule. I didn't interrupt. I didn't volunteer. I didn't try. They talked like I didn't exist. Not out of cruelty, but out of a deeper comfort, the kind that comes from forgetting someone's presence even when they're in the next room. I paused mid-scrub when I heard my dad's voice drop. "So we might have to push it back." "Seriously," my mom said. Aisha groaned. "Again. It's just the timing, and flights are way up this year." "God, everything's expensive," Mom muttered. My hand froze on the scrub brush. My knees pressed against the cold tile, and I leaned just slightly toward the door. They weren't naming it, but I knew what it was. Another trip, another plan, and another excuse forming like fog between their words. No one mentioned my name, not once. I waited, expecting the conversation to shift, maybe some acknowledgement of me, of how I might fit in this time, or maybe even how I'd earned a spot more than anyone. But no, it was just them and the assumption that I'd understand, that I'd stay behind again without question. I stood up, rinsed the brush, dried my hands, and didn't say a word. That night I ate dinner late, long after their laughter had faded into TV static and half-drunk soda cans. I didn't ask what they were watching. I didn't offer to clean up. I just made myself a sandwich, ate at the counter, and watched the reflection of the room in the microwave door. It looked like a family. It just didn't feel like one. And honestly, I didn't even feel angry. That was what scared me most, not the silence, but how comfortable it was becoming. The next morning, I watered my plants while the others slept. Quiet routines became my new rebellion. I left early for work, took my break alone, skipped the chatter in the break room. Carl asked if everything was okay. I smiled. Better than ever, because in a way it was. Each day I stayed quiet, they gave me something I hadn't had before, permission to leave. Emotionally, mentally, eventually physically. One evening, I got home early and found Aisha filming a video in the hallway mirror. Her voice bounced off the walls as she recited some travel tip she clearly stole from an influencer. "Make sure to always bring your own towel. Hotels never wash them right." I sidestepped her ring light. She noticed me only when I was already halfway down the hall. "Ebony, can you never mind?" Whatever she was going to ask, she must have thought better of it. I didn't stop walking. That weekend, our parents made spaghetti and someone put music on. The apartment swelled with noise again, happy noise, busy noise. But I didn't join them. I vacuumed the back bedrooms instead. It was there, under the hum of the old vacuum, that I realized something strange. I wasn't waiting for an invitation anymore. I wasn't hoping to be asked, included, or remembered. I was observing, like a visitor in someone else's story. And that made the silence easier to carry, because it wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. The heat came early that summer, pushing through the curtains and settling into the apartment like an unwelcome guest. I'd just come in from my morning shift, sunburnt through my uniform collar, when my parents called me into the living room. They were sitting on the couch, side by side. The air felt rehearsed. I stayed standing. "So," my dad began, "we wanted to talk to you about something." My stomach tightened. It wasn't fear, it was expectation. "We're not going on the trip this year," Mom said, hands folded neatly in her lap. "Things are just too tight financially." I tilted my head. "What trip?" She blinked. "The one we mentioned a few weeks ago, just casually. We were thinking of a family getaway, but now." "Well, it's not going to happen." Aisha wasn't in the room, but I could hear her music faintly from down the hall. I crossed my arms. "That's a shame." I said it flatly. No tone, no emotion, just a statement to fill the space. They looked at each other, almost surprised I didn't ask follow-up questions. I didn't ask which trip. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask why, because I already knew. This wasn't a cancellation. It was a cover-up. They hadn't expected me to hear their earlier conversation in the kitchen. They assumed I was still eager, still desperate for inclusion, still gullible. They were wrong. A part of me wanted to challenge them, to throw their words back at them, expose the performance. But I didn't, because what was the point? Words hadn't changed anything before. They wouldn't now. Instead, I gave a small, polite nod. Well, I hope things ease up for you. I turned and walked toward the hallway, but my mother called after me. Ebony, I paused. We're still hoping to do something all together maybe in the fall. Just need a little time to figure things out. I looked back at her, taking in the hopeful curve of her mouth, the way she seemed so sure I'd still be available, still willing. Sure, I said, and I meant it like I always did, not as agreement but as a goodbye. That evening, while they sat in the living room watching reruns and trading half-hearted jokes, I vacuumed their bedroom. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know. Something in me, it buzzed. A pressure in my chest that said, there's something you're not supposed to find. I moved slowly, methodically. I lifted the edge of their bed skirt and reached beneath the frame. My fingers brushed against something stiff. Paper. I pulled it out gently. A manila envelope. I sat on the floor, knees bent, the vacuum still running beside me like white noise for a world I didn't want to live in anymore. Inside were 3 glossy plane tickets, round trip, all dated for 2 weeks from now, tucked between brochures for a beachside resort and receipts for matching luggage sets. My chest hollowed. 3 tickets, not 4, not a placeholder for me. Not even a lie to say they'd hoped I could join if things changed. No, they hadn't just excluded me again. They'd planned to lie about it before it even happened. I stared at those tickets until the room blurred. It wasn't even about the trip anymore. It was about knowing they were capable of this. Capable of lying to my face. Capable of choosing Aisha again like they always had and dressing it up in soft language. We just need time, sweetie. Next time, we promise. There was no next time, not anymore. I slid the envelope back into place and finished vacuuming. Quietly. Carefully. Because sometimes power doesn't come from shouting. Sometimes it comes from knowing. And choosing not to let them see how much you know until it's too late. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of anger or heartbreak, but because I finally felt clear. I lay in bed with the ceiling fan clicking overhead, its rhythm oddly soothing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting on them. Not for fairness. Not for apologies. Not for inclusion. I knew what I had to do. At sunrise, I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with the manila envelope resting in front of me. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. The betrayal was already etched into my skin like a sunburn, too deep to deny. Instead, I pulled out my laptop. I'd never sold anything of real value online before, but something about this felt easy, mechanical. I found a travel forum with an anonymous resale section. Entered the dates, destination, airline. Attached grainy photos taken with shaky hands. I didn't overprice them. I wanted them gone. Within 3 hours, I had a buyer. He Venmo'd the full amount plus a delivery tip. Said he'd been trying to book that exact trip for weeks, but the flights were full. Lucky me, he wrote. I transferred the money into my savings account and stared at the screen. $1,223.84. Just like that. It felt surreal. Like stealing back years of self-worth, except this time no one could stop me. I sent the tickets through an encrypted PDF, deleted every trace, hid the envelope in the back of the utility drawer under expired coupons and loose rubber bands. By noon, I was booking my own flight. Santa Fe. I'd chosen it weeks ago for no particular reason. It had simply felt warm, far, unfamiliar in the best way. Now it was more than a fantasy. It was a destination I'd bought for myself. No guilt, no permission, just mine. I found a room in a charming casita rental on the edge of town. Tiny kitchen, clay walls, and enough distance from everyone and everything I'd ever known. 2 weeks. Prepaid. I pressed confirm and sat back in my chair, heart racing. I wasn't even afraid, just alive. Next, I pulled up apartment listings again, not just to dream, but to act. I inquired about a sublet on the east side of town, quiet neighborhood, walking distance to the diner. I didn't tell Nima. Not yet. Not because I didn't trust her, but because this part, the choosing, the risk, it had to be mine alone. That evening, Aisha came home in a rush, her phone buzzing nonstop. We have to rebook the resort, she muttered, tossing her purse on the couch. Prices just jumped again. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Instead, I walked past her, calm as fog, and went into my room. I packed slowly that night. Not everything, just the essentials, a couple of dresses, my favorite journal. A photo of me and Nima from high school, laughing under a street lamp. I tucked it between two shirts. Each item felt like a goodbye, to who I'd been, to what I'd accepted, to the version of me that waited, begged, and hoped for change from people who never intended to give it. By midnight, my suitcase was zipped, standing by the door like a secret ready to be told. The apartment didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place I'd been trapped in long enough. Now I had a plane ticket and a plan. I didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone to come with me. I told them at breakfast. Mom was scrambling eggs. Dad was half asleep, reading headlines on his phone. Aisha was nowhere in sight, probably at the nail salon or still in bed. I set my mug down carefully. "I'm going on vacation," I said, just like that. No build-up, no apology, no explanation. Mom turned off the stove mid-sizzle. "You're what?" "I'm going away for a bit, Santa Fe, 2 weeks." Dad looked up slowly, eyebrows raised. "With who?" "Just me." A long pause followed, the kind where everyone in the room decides what part of your sentence they're going to ignore first. Then came the laughter, not loud, not even mean, really. Worse, it was amused. "You," Mom chuckled, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Since when do you vacation?" Dad joined in. "What, you copyin' our lifestyle now?" My stomach clenched. My face didn't change. "I booked it last week. Flight leaves tomorrow." Another silence. Mom narrowed her eyes. "You have that kind of money," I shrugged. "Guess so." It wasn't a lie, I just didn't feel the need to explain that her own plane tickets helped fund the trip. That detail was mine to keep. Dad leaned back in his chair like I'd just told him I'd bought a mansion. "You serious?" I looked him in the eye. Dead serious. They didn't know what to say after that, and I didn't fill the silence. I just finished my toast, rinsed my plate, and walked out. That afternoon, I packed the last of my things. My journal, the cheap necklace Nima gave me on my 21st birthday, my little cactus plant that somehow hadn't died despite the chaos around it. I walked through the apartment slowly, not with sentiment, with clarity. This place wasn't home. It was a storage unit for expectations I never signed up for. Every room carried a version of me that had served others, cleaned up after others, lowered herself to stay invisible. I didn't hate it, I just didn't need it anymore. That evening, I sat on the fire escape and watched the sun drip down behind the old laundromat across the street. The metal under me was hot from the day, but I didn't move. Nima called right as the sky turned lilac. "So," she asked, like she already knew, "you gonna tell me what you did?" I smiled into the phone. "I leave tomorrow." She let out a long breath. "Where to?" "Santa Fe." She whistled. "Look at you, finally picking yourself." "I didn't pick myself," I said softly. "I chose myself, it's different." She didn't speak for a long time. Then, "You need anything? Just a promise. Name it. Don't let me come back to the same life." She laughed, sad and sweet all at once. "Deal." The next morning, I was up before the sun. No one else stirred. I left a note on the fridge. Just 4 words, "Gone to find myself." I didn't expect a response, didn't need one. The ride to the airport was quiet. The driver didn't ask questions. I watched the city blur past the window, the same streets I used to walk home from double shifts, the same block where Aisha had once forgotten to pick me up in the rain. At the terminal, I waited near the gate, headphones in, backpack tight across my shoulders. And then finally they started calling boarding groups. When my group was called, I stood slowly. No rush, no fear. Just me, holding the ticket I'd bought with my own hands, stepping into the future I'd stopped asking permission for. As I walked down the jet bridge, I didn't look back, because what was behind me was never really mine to begin with. Santa Fe was everything I didn't know I needed. Sunlight spilled like syrup over clay-colored rooftops. The air smelled faintly of sage and old stories. The casita I rented was small, just 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a courtyard with wildflowers that seemed to grow without permission. It was perfect. I spent the first day doing nothing. No alarms, no chores, no emotional landmines waiting behind polite questions, just silence. But the kind that felt like a blanket this time, not a punishment. On the second day, I wandered the plaza, bought a pair of earrings from a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, ate tamales on a shaded bench, and watched a group of school kids sketching buildings. No one here knew me as the older sister or the responsible one. I wasn't the planner, the fixer, the filler of silence. I was just Ebony. And that was enough. I sent Nima a picture of my breakfast on day 3. A note with it, "Is this what peace tastes like?" She replied with a heart and nothing else. She understood. But the peace didn't last long. Not because of anything I did, but because of the phone call. It came just before noon while I was thumbing through postcards at a tourist stand. Mom incoming call. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then I answered. "Hello." Her voice was tight, clipped. "Have you seen the plane tickets?" I blinked. "What? Our tickets? We can't find them. They're not in the envelope, Ebony. They were right under our bed." I cut her off, cool and even. "No idea." Silence. Then sharper. "You were vacuuming in our room, weren't you?" I could almost hear her putting it together. The way parents do when the illusion of control starts slipping. I played dumb. "I was cleaning, like always." Another pause. "Ebony, I'm on vacation," I said, voice light. "Can we not?" "You're acting," she stopped herself. But I knew what was coming, out of line, ungrateful, dramatic. All the old labels they used when I refused to play the role they wrote for me. I didn't give her a chance to say any of them. "I'll talk to you later," I said and hung up. My hands were shaking a little, but not from guilt, from adrenaline, because I knew exactly what would happen next, and I was right. Within minutes, the family group chat lit up. First, a message from Dad. "Does anyone know where the tickets are?" Then Aisha chimed in. "Why would I take them? That's insane." "Mom, Ebony vacuumed in our room the day before they disappeared." "Aisha, are you seriously accusing me?" Then, "I'm not talking to either of you if this is how it's gonna be." Then came the exit notification. "Aisha has left the group." I stared at the screen. And then I smiled. Not because it felt good to see them unravel, but because, for once, it wasn't my job to hold them together. Later that night, as I stood barefoot in the courtyard, moonlight dusting the tops of the garden pots, I realized something. They weren't mad because I lied. They were mad because I didn't explain. I didn't defend, didn't plead, didn't need, I just left. And when people like them lose control over someone they thought they owned, they don't grieve, they punish. But they couldn't reach me anymore. The next morning, I sipped tea by the window while the group chat sat in silence, fractured and full of blame. I didn't respond, didn't check in, didn't fix it. I just closed my phone, leaned back, and listened to the birds. I was still learning what freedom sounded like, but I was getting better every day. It happened on day 4. I was sitting at a cafe in downtown Santa Fe, the kind with mismatched chairs and servers who remembered your name after one coffee. I just finished journaling when my phone lit up. Dad incoming call. I let it ring. Then Mom. Then Aisha. Then all at once the family group chat exploded. I read the first message twice just to be sure. "Mom, we just checked the email history. The tickets were sold. Sold? Who did this?" My heart didn't skip, it slowed. There it was, the confirmation, no more speculation, no more side-eyes or accusations through implication. They knew. And yet not one of them said my name. Instead, "Dad, this is theft. Someone accessed our stuff." "Aisha, how would anyone even sell them, unless they knew exactly what was in that envelope?" "Mom, someone in this house did it." "Aisha, I moved out already. So unless y'all are accusing me again, maybe look closer to home." The word home felt so misplaced, it almost made me laugh. They weren't trying to figure it out. They were trying to survive the shame of knowing they'd been outmaneuvered. By me. They just didn't want to believe it. I didn't answer any of their calls, didn't even open the voicemails. I sat in the corner of the cafe and stirred honey into my tea, letting the heat seep through my fingers, letting my silence speak louder than anything I could have said. Because this was the part they weren't prepared for. Not the tickets, not the lie, not even the betrayal. But the calm. They expected rage, a dramatic confrontation, a shouted confession, but I gave them none of it. Instead, I checked my email, confirmed the sublet was secured. A tiny studio near the park, move-in ready the day after I returned, a clean space. No ghosts. The next day, I got a message from Aisha, not in the group chat. Direct. "Aisha, I'm out. I'm done with them." That was it. No questions, no blame, no apology either, just a declaration. I stared at her message for a long time. Remembered all the years I swallowed my frustration while she lived above the consequences. And now here she was, finally stepping out of their shadow. Was it selfish? Maybe. But something told me this wasn't about loyalty anymore. It was survival. Later that night, I watched the sun set from the steps of the casita. I thought about how easily the truth unraveled everything. Not just the lie, but the family dynamic, their trust, their routine of casting me as the afterthought. And now, there was no script, no scapegoat, just silence. I didn't celebrate, I didn't cheer. But inside, I felt something bloom, small and steady. Not revenge, not justice, but release. I had no idea what the fallout would be when I got back. All I knew was that whatever it looked like, it would no longer be my job to clean it up. I stepped off the Greyhound just as the sun began to climb, its light slanting through the grime-streaked windows of the Cleveland terminal. It smelled like wet concrete and old gum. Home, if I was still naive enough to call it that. Dragging my suitcase behind me, I moved through the familiar streets like a ghost retracing her own footsteps. Nothing had changed, but I had. Our apartment door stuck the way it always had, needing that awkward shoulder nudge. When it finally swung open, I stood still for a moment, letting the weight of the air hit me. Same beige carpet. Same dented wall from that time Aisha slammed her door too hard during a tantrum. Same picture frames, slightly crooked. Only now the house was silent. No frying bacon. No TV echoing from the living room. No overlapping voices yelling for who drank the last of the juice. Just stillness. I rolled my bag past the hallway into my bedroom, expecting the stale comfort of familiarity. But something had changed. My bed was made perfectly. The kind of tidy you only see in catalogs. My plants, still green and thriving, lined the sill like loyal friends. And on my bed, a thick envelope. I opened it slowly, heart thudding. A lease. East Ridge Apartments, Unit 3B. My name was already filled in at the top in clean, blocky letters. Signed. Dated. Attached was a sticky note, ink slightly smudged. "It's yours. Move-in date tomorrow. I paid the deposit. You'll pay me back when you can. No rush, just go." And, for the first time since Santa Fe, I cried. Not loud, not ugly. Just the kind of tears that come when you realize someone thought about your future while you were still busy escaping your past. I sat on the edge of the bed, Lise clutched in my lap, trying to absorb the reality of it. Freedom. Not just imagined, not just dreamt, but ready. Outside my room, I heard a rustle, laundry being folded probably. I stepped into the hallway and found my mother at the table, sorting towels with mechanical precision. She didn't look up when she said, "Your sister's gone." I didn't react. "She took everything yesterday, said she's not coming back." Her voice trembled just barely. I watched her for a moment, her hunched back and the way her hands smoothed out each towel like she was trying to iron the chaos out of her life. "She left because she was tired," I said. Still, she didn't meet my eyes. After a beat, she muttered, "Your father's been sitting on the porch since yesterday morning, says he doesn't know what to say to either of you." Silence bloomed like mold between us. "I'm moving out," I said. She dropped the towel. "You just got back." "No," I corrected, stepping further into the kitchen. "I came to pack." Finally, she looked at me. Her eyes searched my face for something, maybe softness, maybe guilt, maybe the version of me she used to control. But all she saw was calm. A quiet she didn't understand. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow." Her mouth opened, then closed. She reached for the edge of the counter to steady herself. "Is it because of the tickets?" I almost laughed. All the years of being overlooked, overworked, and dismissed, and she thought it came down to one envelope. "It's because you never chose me," I said. "Not once. Not when I worked late. Not when I skipped dances to help Aisha with homework. Not when I cleaned your house while you planned getaways without me." "I didn't mean," she started. I held up a hand. "You meant to keep peace, but only by making me the one who always gave in." Her shoulders folded inward. I didn't stay to comfort her. Instead, I walked into the kitchen drawer, the one that creaked like a warning every time it opened. The envelope was still there, flattened, empty, meaningless. I tossed it in the trash and returned to my room. For the next few hours, I packed with slow intention. The mug I bought during my first solo thrift trip. The journal with my scribbled dreams. The hoodie I wore to my first job interview, my cactus plant. Each item a piece of the life I was finally choosing. Evening came and I sat cross-legged on my stripped bed, cardboard boxes surrounding me like sentinels. The air smelled like dust and release. A knock. I looked up. My dad stood in the doorway, his ball cap twisted nervously in his hands. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at him, the man who taught me how to ride a bike but forgot how to show up when it mattered. "I will be," he nodded slowly. Then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from him, "I'm sorry." My throat tightened. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I didn't say the words back, didn't need to. The silence was enough. The next morning, I left the keys on the counter. I didn't write a letter, didn't leave a speech. No dramatic exit. Just the sound of the door clicking shut behind me, soft and final. 3 months later, I don't set alarms anymore. The sun wakes me, not a scolding voice, not the creak of someone else's footsteps in the hallway, just soft light slipping through white curtains I picked out myself at a flea market 2 blocks from here. My studio is small, not cramped, intentional. Every piece of it chosen, nothing inherited, nothing given out of guilt, nothing I had to beg for or apologize to use, just mine. The walls are pale green. My cactus sits in the window like it knows it survived something with me. There's a thrifted bookshelf I painted teal. A second-hand kettle that whistles every morning like it's proud to be here. A soft rug Nima insisted I buy even when I hesitated at the price. "This is what comfort feels like," she'd said. "Let it live on your floor." And it does. So do I make tea and sit by the window every morning. No one interrupts. No one asks what I'm doing or why I'm not helping. There's no background noise, just the hum of my own choosing. That silence, it's golden. I check my phone once a day now. Messages come in, mostly from Nima. Sometimes from my manager who gave me weekend shifts only so I could focus on the writing course I enrolled in. Occasionally, a mass-forwarded joke from a cousin. But the last voicemail from Aisha came weeks ago. I didn't listen to it. Just read the transcription. I don't know why I called. I just, sorry, forget it. It ended in silence. No apology, no explanation, just sniffles. I deleted it. Not because I was angry, because I didn't need to carry that weight anymore. Forgiveness isn't always an open door. Sometimes it's choosing not to unlock it again. Last week, I walked past the park near my new place and watched 2 sisters chase each other across the grass. The older one stopped, picked up the younger when she fell, brushed off her knees. No one told her to. She just did. That's the thing about being an older sister. It's not about order, it's about instinct. But when instinct is punished, twisted into obligation and silence, it warps you. And healing means unlearning that reflex. I'm still learning. But now I don't overgive. I don't overstay. I don't explain why I left, because no one ever explained why they made me want to. Nima asked me last night, over spicy noodles and cheap wine, if I miss them. I thought about it. "Sometimes," I said, "but only the version of them I thought they were." She nodded, didn't press. That's why she's my real family. People who don't need to fix you, just see you. Tonight I'll probably sit out on the stoop again, journal a bit, watch the lights flicker on across the street. My world is smaller now, but it's mine. No one gets to exile me from it. No one gets to vote on my worth. And if anyone's still wondering why I left,